Hello and welcome to Broken Entertainment. Today I'm going to talk about something that's been bugging me a lot for the past 5 years especially, but it's really been something that's been around for the last 10 or 15 years, and it's this kind of false diversity that a lot of our media and entertainment's pushing on us of late. And I call it false diversity because to me, diversity is you make a new character who is a minority of some kind, whatever it happens to be, female, person of color, whatever. Make this awesome character. You make them stand on their own 2 feet as a character and tell a great story with them. But what we're getting and being told over and over again by Hollywood and by our comic industry, particularly Marvel, is something completely different. And to me, it really talks down to the people that it's supposed to be supporting. Um, and you'll see that a lot, especially in the Marvel comics of the last 5 or so years, maybe a little longer. And I'm going to run through in this video, I'm going to run through some really major examples, particularly recent examples, and show you exactly what I'm talking about. And I'm also going to do something I didn't expect. I'm going to praise Marvel for doing something. Um, I don't generally like Marvel comics to begin with, and they're really horribly guilty of this. So I didn't think I'd ever be saying, hey, here's something Marvel did that's great, but we'll get to that. Um, the first thing really that comes to mind when I look at these is I'm going to use Terminator Dark Fate as my first example. In Terminator Dark Fate, we're supposed to believe that this is a super diverse movie, and oh, look at how great we're being. We're representing women and Hispanic people, and it does it in such a horrible way that it feels like a lie at best, and uh, talking down to, again, the people that it's supposed to be supporting, because they're not making a new character. Actually, there is one new character in there, but I'll get to that. They're not making a new character and making her stand out on her own and be awesome, and telling a great story around her. They're taking an existing character's story and an existing character's um, background and popularity, and they're shoving it onto this new character so that you're just supposed to say, oh yeah, I really like that character, even though there's nothing new about it. It's actually a different character. Because, spoiler alert, in the first 5 minutes of Terminator Dark Fate, they kill John Connor. And then what do we get? We get Danny Ramos here as the new savior of humanity. And she's going through basically the same story that John Connor has. The Terminator comes back in time, tries to kill her, kills most of her family, and is hunting her down so that she won't save humanity in the future by leading the resistance. It's the same story, but it's a woman, a Hispanic woman. And it's like, why couldn't you just make this cool Hispanic character who stands on her own 2 feet and has her own story and her own background and does her own awesome stuff? It would have been so easy for them to take this character and say, okay, we're going to have John Connor just off somewhere, doing John Connor stuff, right? And this character is a vital member of, his most trusted advisor, his best counsel in the future. And we're going to tell her story about how she survives these events and how Skynet comes after her. And I know it's not called Skynet in Dark Fate, but whatever. they could have told that story, but instead they make a character. They say, okay, we need to check off some diversity boxes, so we're gonna call her. We're gonna make it a woman. We're gonna make it a woman of color. And then, what do we want to do to make her own character? Oh, we don't want to. That's too much work. Um, let's just make her. Let's just give her John Connor's story. So they shoot a 12-year-old boy in the beginning of the movie, so that this other character can literally steal his story. Um, it's just awful. It's not awful just because they're destroying the great character of John Connor. It's awful because they're they're making a character with, for what I understand, a good actress, and they're just doing nothing with it. They take all this promise, and rather than make this new character and give her own story, they just give her John's, and then we're supposed to like her because, hey, it's the savior of humanity. Well, we already had one of those in this story who's already gone through all this crap, so you could have made her someone else entirely. And yeah, it's more of the same. Uh, Terminator travels back in time, tries to kill someone story that we've already dealt with anyway. Um, I don't think they should have even gone the time travel route. Personally, I think we should be dealing with future war stuff. But here we are. Um, it's at best it's lazy. It's like, okay, we have this great female character that we want to make, but writing women characters is hard. Well, let's just give her this other stuff that everyone's already familiar with, and then they'll just like her automatically. I mean, and lazy's being nice. Stupid and deceptive come to mind too. Um, and I have absolutely no problem with the idea of Danny Ramos as a different character, but I don't want another John Connor. I already have one. And killing John Connor and repackaging John Connor's story in a female form, that's not diversity. That's being lazy. Diversity is Sarah Connor from Terminator 1 and 2, especially 2, where she really comes into her own as this really awesome, strong woman. Um, she's her own character. She has no one else's story but her own, and she owns it. And she becomes this, you know, I hate to use the word badass because everyone throws it around all the time now, but that's what she is. She's awesome. Everybody loved her. Um, that's why they brought her back for this movie. But that's how you do a diverse character. You make a character, it's a woman, she acts like a woman, she talks like a woman, and she has her own story, her own interests, her own motives, and not somebody else's. I mean, all they did was they took a man's story and put it on a woman with Danny Ramos, and that's not diverse. I'm sorry, it's not. Yes, it's a woman, but it's not really a woman when you analyze it because it's a story from a male character. They've just stolen it and given it to someone else. If you go back into comic book history, in the 40s, we got Wonder Woman. That's a diverse character because prior to that, you had all male characters, and they said, "Hey, we want to have a female character represent women." So they made Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman's not Superman's story. Wonder Woman isn't Batman's story. Wonder Woman is Wonder Woman's story with her own interests, her own background, and her own drives. She's unique. She's herself. And she's different. and it makes for a great character. If they had said, "Oh, what if we just do like Superwoman?" I know there's Supergirl, um, that came later on, and I'll get to that in a second. But if they had just given her someone else's identity, but suddenly they were female, that's not the same impact. That's not saying, look at how awesome women can be. That's saying, look at how awesome this other character was. It's hard to write women. I don't really feel like putting in the effort. So we're just gonna clone them and put them on this woman. It, it's terrible writing. And we just keep seeing it over and over and over again. Dark Fate is the latest example. It's a miserable failure of a movie. It's flopping at home and internationally, and it deserves it because it's crap. If they wanted to tell a great story, like I said, they could have made her super important in the future, but not John Connor's story, her own story, and how she comes to be the person that she will be in the future. And you could even have her meet up with John Connor at the end of the movie if you really wanted to bring John Connor into it. But instead, they just, oh, here's the female John Connor. You know, come on. Um, Hilariously, in the same movie, we actually have a good example of diversity. Um, True diversity. You have the character of Grace here in the middle of the image. Um, Grace is not somebody else. You could almost draw a parallel to Marcus from Terminator Salvation. They're kind of similar, but they're not the same. And she's this hybrid character that gets sent back in time to save the savior of humanity. You know, stop me if you've heard this before, right? It's a woman. She's strong. She's been given these Terminator style upgrades. That's actually pretty interesting as a character. And there's your strong female character. Because she is her own character. She has her own goals and her own motives. And she doesn't have someone else's story stolen and grafted onto her. It's funny to me that they have the same. In the same movie, you have deceptive crap diversity and actual good diversity. But there it is. Sarah Connor's in the movie too. I don't really care. You know, she's old. She's not really convincing in the clips and pictures that I've seen of her. Um, no fault of the actress, just probably the storytelling, to be honest. Um, and the other thing is, you can't take a character like John Connor. You can't say we're gonna be diverse. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna murder a male character and replace it with a female character. That's diversity isn't everything being the same, right? Diversity is difference. So if you want to be diverse, what do? You have different types of characters in the same movie or in the same story, and just killing off men and replacing them with women, or killing off, say, white women and replacing them with people of color or women of color. Sorry, um, that doesn't cut it. It's it's just getting rid of one thing and replacing it with another. It's still not good. Um, so moving on from Dark Fate, there's some other recent examples. Um, Star Trek Discovery is a fiasco that comes to mind too. Um, you have the character of Michael Burnham, and she is this all-powerful super being around which the entire universe revolves, essentially, by the end of the second season, which is just ridiculous. They destroy, they don't kill in this instance, but they destroy the character of Spock so Michael Burnham can build him up. This is different because it's not taking someone's story and grafting it onto her, but it's also very similar because in this instance, you're saying the existing character couldn't have been themselves if it weren't for this new character. So you're still taking that character, the new character, and you're building them around this other character. Michael Burnham should stand on her own 2 feet as a character. And not by being a Mary Sue where she does nothing wrong and she's always right and everyone else is always wrong and she's great at everything she does and so on and so forth and the savior of the universe. She needs to be great by being an interesting, compelling character, and Michael Burnham is neither of those things. So it's another example of this false diversity that I'm talking about, where rather than a compelling, interesting character that you love for generations, like, say, Princess Leia or Sarah Connor, it's just a Mary Sue that no one cares about, that you're supposed to like, and you're supposed to go, aha, a female lead, yay, diversity. It's like, no. If you want effective diversity, you have to have good characters, and a Mary Sue character around which the whole universe revolves is not a good example of that. Uh, you know, superheroes, we're seeing the same thing with superheroes, right? Um, Thor gets replaced by Jane Foster several years ago, becomes Lady Thor. I know we're not supposed to call her Lady Thor, but it's Thor, and literally steals his name. Because why? Well, Marvel says diversity. Well, what would have been diversity is taking either an existing character like, say, Valkyrie, who is an interesting, if underutilized, female character from the same planet as Thor and the same species as Thor. They could have just gone more into depth with her and made her more interesting and more compelling. They already had her. Or they could have made a totally new character. But they didn't. They took a sub character that no one really cared about that much, and they took Thor's name and Thor's powers and sort of Thor's appearance, and they stuck her on this woman, and they said, "Here, we're diverse." No, you're not, because you're saying that Jane Foster is only interesting and strong woman if she takes a man's stuff. That do you see the problem with that? Um, Ironheart does the same thing. Tony Stark doesn't. I don't think he died, but he got injured and couldn't do it anymore for a while, and then so you get this new black girl that comes in, and she takes his place, literally takes his stuff, takes his technology, builds her own version of the suit, and you have a different name, Ironheart, instead of Iron Woman, I guess. um, but it's the same idea. It's just, I mean, she's even wearing his suit, basically. I mean, it's one she built for herself, but it's kind of the same idea of just wrapping this male um, character around a woman and saying, hey, we're being diverse. Well, you're not, because, again, you could have made an interesting individual character that stands on her own 2 feet, has her own story, and so on. But instead, you said, it's hard to make black women interesting, so let's just wrap Iron Man around her. At least that's what it says to me. If you couldn't be driven to make an awesome female black character, which they've done in the past. You had, I can't think of it, Monica Rambeau, who was Captain Marvel long before Carol Danvers was. She was interesting. Um, but no, they just took Iron Man and they wrapped him around a woman's form, and they said, "Here you go." You know, um, you see the same thing when Captain America's dead for a while. They replace him with I forget the guy's name, but he's Falcon. He's Falcon. Um, so then they said, "Look, we have a black Captain America. Everybody praise us." And it's like, why didn't you just make the Falcon more interesting, or make a new character who happens to be a person of color, and make them really cool and give them their own powers and their own origin and everything? No, you just made him Captain America with a different shield. It's like all of this reads to me as like either you're too damn lazy to make a new character, or you're too inept to make a new character, or worse, you think it's too hard to make a minority character interesting, so you take something and wrap it around them and hope that it works. This crap just keeps happening over and over again, and I hate it because it's not diversity at all. Diversity is Wonder Woman. Diversity is Sarah Connor. Diversity is the character of Grace from Dark Fate. Those are diverse. Taking John Connor and making it female is not diverse. That's just a lie. They're doing the same thing with Doctor Who, and I love Doctor Who, and I tried really hard to go into the female Doctor with an open mind, but I couldn't even finish the first season. And there's a lot of reasons for that. There's some really horrible writing. But the other reason is that they just failed miserably to make a good character. They're just trying to say, look, a woman can also be the Doctor. It's like, oh, it's too hard to come up with a female character for this show that's really awesome and could be a central character. So we're just gonna make the Doctor a woman. That way, this new person has all the popularity of the Doctor. They could have easily made a spin-off show about in one of David Tennant's episodes, he has a sort of cloned daughter, and she goes off on her own at the end of the show. And she was a really interesting character. They could have taken that, built a whole show around it, and you would have had this awesome new character. And instead, they just forced fed us, hey, all of a sudden, Time Lords can change genders, and here's a female Doctor. Um, Even that might have worked because of how the show works, but the writing just failed miserably. What I'm saying is, if you are creating something, if you're writing something, and you want to be diverse, you want to support or to represent minorities, do it. But do it by making an awesome character that stands on its own. And that's where I'm going to get to Marvel actually achieving something, doing it right. Marvel has just made a bunch of new characters. One of them that I have read is Arrow. She's a Chinese woman who lives in, I believe it's Shanghai, and she controls the wind and air, so it's pretty powerful. Um, and she's interesting. She's a architect who just loves designing these awesome buildings, and we're learning about her for the first time. She's a brand new hero. That is what I'm talking about. She's not somebody else with a different face. She's her own character, and she's compelling. I want to see where it goes. I don't actually think the first issue of Arrow was that good, but it wasn't because of the character. It was just a kind of disjointed story. And I'll do a video on that later about that issue of Arrow and more about the Arrow character. But that is a perfect example of what I'm talking about. They made new powers, a new character, totally new origin, totally new story, different personality, different motives, and they said, here you go. That's diversity. That is real diversity. Stealing something like John Connor and grafting it onto something else, that's not diversity, that's laziness at best. So if you liked the video, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and I will see you next time.